Hi everybody, it's great to be back here again. Itamar is Friday. Wow, it's a very special Shabbat coming in here. We have on Itamar we call a Shabbat Kihila, where everyone is going to be inviting guests and try to unite the community. A beautiful Shabbat where we're going to try to bridge the gaps, and give hugs to one another and bring the community closer. It's a very important thing to do. People must always unite and try to show their love for one another. And this is connected to this week's portion, which I want to discuss. This week's portion is very special. It's called Parashat Vayakhel, meaning to gather, to bring together. Everything's about bringing together. And it's about, of course, finishing up the tabernacle. We have one more portion left to complete the book of Shemot, or Exodus. And this is all about building the tabernacle and it's also about together, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But besides this week's portion is called the Parashat Shekalim. There's another additional reading of the Torah we do. We take out another Torah, and we read a special portion called Parashat Shekalim. It's one of the 4 special portions that are read at this time of year. Purim season is coming in. And I want to discuss a little bit about Parashat Shekalim, or a lot about it, and try to connect it all together and see what it has to do. But before we do all that, before we begin, I think I'll introduce this whole lesson with a scenario that probably has taken place many times in your lives, or you've seen it before. Someone has just about finished something so beautiful that he made in a creation. He's looking at it and saying, wow, how beautiful this is. And all of a sudden, crash, it falls, or something happens, and he has to start again from scratch, or he has to do it again. And we call this in modern language the evil eye. Something's happening here, he got an evil eye or something. A lot of people try to wear charms and say certain prayers to try to prevent themselves from having an evil eye. But in reality, there is something to an evil eye, and we have to understand what this concept is all about and how it connects to everything we're doing here in this week's portion. So I will try to answer that and bring the connection. Anyway, getting to quickly down to work, the Torah in Parashat Shekalim, which we're going to read, was really what we read last week. We're going to go over it again for a second time. And the Torah tells us that when you count Israel, in order to prevent them from being plagued, you must count them in what fashion? By bringing half a shekel coin. Which means you can't count directly, but you have to do it in a half a shekel coin. This half a shekel coin, mentioned again in Parashat Kitisa of Shekalim, was used for an important purpose, for building the tabernacle, of course. And it was used particularly for the adanim, the base, the silver bases where the actual logs, the wood, these huge boards, whatever, the tabernacle were placed inside. So it was a sort of an important base itself in order to hold the tabernacle together. And that really came together because of the half a shekel donation. Everyone had to give 20 years and up in age. Again, if it wasn't done this way, it could cause, God is hinting here that counting Israel directly can cause a plague. So if we really summarize, this particular reading has two points to it. Number one, counting Israel, do it using a half a coin. And 2 is used for some kind of communal donation to the tabernacle. Right? Everyone had to give the same thing, same donation. As a matter of fact, later on, this became a Jewish law that every year we have to all participate in the public sacrifices that were done in the temple. And therefore, everyone had to give this half a shekel coin, and it would allow them to be part of what went on in the temple. So everyone had a place within the temple itself. It's also about uniting and bringing it together. We say it's all connected. So anyway, here, those 2 elements are brought down in regards to Shekalim. If we look if we ask the question, why, if you count the regular way without using the Shekalim, why can it cause a plague? And this we see happen in the book of Samuel, too. At the end of the book of Samuel, King David, as a matter of fact, tells his the head of the army, Yoav, his head of the army, to go count Israel, and Yoav is taken aback. He is not thrilled to be doing such a thing because he knows it's not the right thing to do. But King David sort of makes him do it. At the end, it causes a plague of 70,000 people being killed. So we really see the dangers of counting Israel directly. You don't say 1, 2, 3, but you take the half a shekel and then you can do a roundabout counting. Anyway, we have to understand why. I opened up with I just mentioned the story about you doing something and the evil eye, whatever, but it's all connected, and I want to understand it, getting a little bit more, focusing on this evil eye thing. If we look, a couple of sources. Number one, if we look in the ethics of our fathers, ethics is, fathers is a famous, part of the Mishnah where different moral ethics and teachings are brought down. And there, one of the rabbis teach us, Rabbi Lezer says, a person must distance himself greatly from an evil eye. He should not be, God forbid, follow the path of an evil eye. Right? Rabbi Joshua brings down, this is brought down in Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 2, in different Mishnayot. One is brought down in 2:9 and one is in 2:11. And he says, an evil eye takes a person out of this world. What is this evil eye that a person should run away from? It takes a person out of this world. Another source, we look in Proverbs 23:6, it says, eat you not the bread of him that has an evil eye. A person should not participate in a meal with someone who has an evil eye, because he doesn't really want to allow him to have this, whatever. He's not giving with a full heart, or desire his delicacies. Check that out in Proverbs. What is this whole thing of an evil eye? In reality, a person who has an evil eye, God forbid, this is really the source of all evils. A person cannot be, he's not complacent, he's not happy to see a blessing of a fellow man, of a friend, of someone else. He's always feeling, wait a second, why does this person deserve such a blessing for? Of course, it evokes his jealousy. Why does he have this and I don't have this? A person, again, is very egocentric, focusing on himself, and he can't enjoy to see others with blessing and bounty, and it hurts him so much that him looking at that person, he's like saying to him, wait a second, does he deserve this beautiful blessing and bounty? And he's always looking for the bad things in that person, which means he's saying, wait a second, this person has this and this and this flaw to his character, so why is he deserving of such a blessing and a bounty for? And by looking at him with that evil way, by trying to point out the bad things about that person, he evokes judgment against that person. That person is going to be judged because, wait a second, in reality, he has those flaws that this person is pointing out, right? And therefore, those flaws are being judged against what he's blessed with, and maybe he doesn't deserve that blessing. And therefore, boom, it can cause some kind of negative energy. This is really what's behind an evil eye. And people that have that terrible character trait can damage other people because they're always looking at the bad, bringing out the bad out of people. On the opposite, a person has a good eye, and he's so happy when a person is successful. And although he himself may not be successful in that same way, but he's happy for someone else's blessing and success. That can only bring a greater blessing to the person he's looking at. And of course, for the person himself, he will bring a greater blessing for. Because in reality, God will pay back. Those who have a good eye will be blessed with a good eye, and those who have a bad eye blessed with a bad eye. That's how it works. Measure for measure. But anyway, after understanding this concept of a good eye, a bad eye, we have to look into, I'd like to bring down a passage in the Talmud. The Talmud brings down an interesting thing in Ta'anit, it's the name of a tractate, 8b, and brings down Rabbi Isaac. Rabbi Isaac says, a blessing is found in something that is hidden from the eye. When a person wants his things to remain being blessed, it is good to hide them. Now, they shouldn't be in front of everybody. And he gives an example because it says in Deuteronomy 28:8, it says, God shall command the blessing upon you in your storehouses. Now in Hebrew, storehouses is asamecha. Asamecha literally means storehouses, but it comes to the same root in there, samui. Samecha could also come from the word samui. The blessing does not rest only on something that is hidden from the eye. And therefore, Rabbi Isaac is teaching us that we can learn from this verse that if someone has all this bounty and beauty and blessing, it's good to keep it hidden from others. So you don't want those who have this evil eye and looking at people and saying, wait, does he deserve this? So it's always good that it's quiet and hidden. The same thing is in the tractate of Bava Batra, where we're taught, Rabbi Abba, in the name of Rav Hunas, in the name of Rav, teach us that when a person goes out to a field and you see your friend who has beautiful grain, the beautiful field of wheat, and it's complete, bounty, you shouldn't stare at it, you shouldn't look at it, because it can cause a person's not allowed to go out to the field and look at his friend's field Because by looking at this beautiful field with beautiful bounty, it can cause damage to it by an evil eye. So again, we see here that we are taught by these passages in the Talmud to watch out for this evil eye. It's something that exists, and we have to watch out for it. And again, we mentioned a second ago what the cause was. This evil eye is when people look at, again, somebody and always saying, does he deserve that for? Looking at him in a bad light and trying to find his flaws, and in this way causing damage to that person. I read a beautiful explanation on this concept. We're talking about from the Chalban. The Chalban brings down another interesting Talmudic passage in the tractate of Yoma. And there, the Talmud brings down a verse in Hosea, or Hosea, I don't know how to say it in English. Hosea, I don't know how to say it. It's brought down, you can look at it in the prophet himself. And he says, yet the number of the sons of Israel will be like the sand of the sea. So on one hand, the prophet is saying, and Hosea is saying that the people of Israel will be like the sand of the sea. Wow, look at the sand, how many grains of sand there are. And then it goes on to say, which cannot be measured or numbered. So wait a second. Will be like the grains of the sea, or the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And Talmud brings down immediately that these two parts of the verse contradict one another. Because if you say we're going to be like the sand of the sea, although it's a number that's very hard to count, but it still has a finite number of grains, right? It's still finite. But if we say we cannot be measured or numbered, then we're saying we're connected to the infinite. There is just no number. So how can we rectify this contradiction? Whether are you going to be like the sand of the sea, or going to be infinite in number? And the rabbis give an interesting answer. And they say, when we will do the will of God, we will be infinite in number. But when we do not do the will of God, then it applies to us to be like the sand of the sea. Let's try to understand what's the difference of these two expressions. The sand of the sea or infinite. When do they both apply? Why does one apply? Why will it be like infinite number if we do the will of Hashem? And the Chalban explains something very beautiful. And he says, you know something, when a person, what is the function of a person doing the will of God? When Israel is bringing the light, and we spoke about this last week, right, about the light of God in the world, and that's the purpose of Israel, to be a light to the nations. We bring a light of Hashem down to the world. We're sort of connecting the infinite creator, the light of God, which has no boundaries, to a finite world, a world of boundaries. And we're saying that in this world we can discover God. In this world we can connect this world to the infinite creator. That, when we do that, basically, then we are doing our mission. And that's really what the verse says, we will be like without number. Because we are actually, when we are bringing the light of God down here, we are connecting to the God. And the entire created world becomes an infinite world, because it's connecting to the divine. Beautiful explanation. But on the other hand, God forbid, if we separate ourselves from God, and we do not connect with God, and then we're basically creating boundaries. We're saying this, we're in a world of boundaries, a physical world. Then we're like the sea, the sand of the sea, which is boundaries. Here's the waters here, the sand's over here. You can look at it in that way as well. We have boundaries, we are limited. We are limited to the powers of nature. And that is the second half of the verse. Well, it begins in the first half of the verse, when we do not follow God's word. So we're looking, of course, to follow God and do our function in this world, and being, again, a light, and then we will be infinite. We will connect the world to the infinite. So this is one explanation. But another explanation of how we can explain the difference of the numbers is like this. When we look at something as finite in number, by counting, right, connected to that, we are sort of awakening the ego. We're trying to say this particular thing stands by itself. When you give something a number, you're saying this thing stands on its own. It is not part of a whole. You're just a number. You're giving it a number. You're saying, wow, look how special this is. You're pointing it out. And when you are counting something, and you're trying to show, wow, look what I have, it stands out. And this sort of creates what we call in Hebrew pilug. It creates separation, disunity. So by numbering something, it's actually giving it disunity. Because you're saying it stands alone. And it just shows its arrogance, its ego. Look how much money I have. Look what I have. It's my house. It's my car. It's mine. All this is evoking the ego. On the other hand, when we do not count, we hide what we have, and we are modest about it. We don't look at it. It doesn't interest us. We're more interested in being part of something and uniting with one another. That is the opposite. And that way we are connecting ourselves to the infinite. That's the other side of the coin. Literally, I'm talking about the coins. So this whole beautiful, you take this concept, and we can take it, the half a shekel, and we compare it, it works out very, very beautifully. Because the half a shekel, what is this half shekel when we count the half shekel? We're really showing in reality, it's only half a coin. It's not a whole thing. In reality, it's half of the picture. It can only be a complete picture when it joins in with everyone else's half. And it shows that you are not egoistic. You're just a half. You're not a whole without your neighbor and he's not a whole without his neighbor. Everyone joining together and creating one number and and unifying in one whole combined picture together. And that is the beauty of the half a shekel. The half a shekel represented this modesty, this destroying the ego, the opposite of the evil eye, by showing that we are nothing without each other, and we together are everything. And by everyone giving this half a shekel, it became, again, the public sacrifices, the public service of the temple is all built upon this half a shekel, showing that we're all together and we all participate. In giving this half a shekel, we are uniting as one entity. And that's really when we have true importance. We see that we are one unified nation with one infinite creator, and then we have no numbers. So the number means nothing. But when you're saying you're a number, when you're counting directly, then you're doing the opposite. You are saying we're separate. We're separating from one another. And that is the danger and the poison of the ego. And therefore, we are not allowed to count directly. We have to count by using the half a shekel to show our modesty in who we are. And not try to blow up the ego, create this whole ego thing. And it's very interesting that the Talmud brings down in Brachot, I think 55b, and it talks about that the seed of Joseph did not have an ego at all. Well, why does it mean that? I mean, I'm sorry, they didn't have an ego. I'll tell you why they didn't have an ego. Because the seed of Joseph was protected against the evil eye. And why? Because they didn't have an ego. If you look at everything about Joseph's life, after his brothers sold him down to Egypt, and he became the greatest leader of Egypt. He was so up there. So he could have used his power to show, look at me now. And I can destroy them, and I can punish them, and I can abuse them. But instead of taking revenge, like many would have done, he showed that his ego meant nothing to him. And that everything that he had because he knew it was only a blessing from God and not for anything else. And therefore, Joseph decided to tell his brothers clearly out, that God brought me here to help you all. That was his response. Don't be afraid. Everything is for the benefit. Everything is for the best. That kind of looking at someone with a good eye, we call that the opposite of an evil eye. That's a good eye. And when someone has a good eye, they'll do the opposite, bring blessing down to the world. And that's what Joseph was all about, bringing blessing to his fellow brothers through a good eye. Therefore, it's so interesting as well that Joseph is the foundation, called the Yesod. It was the foundations of the temple, the tabernacle, were built from the half a shekel, because that was connected to the power of Joseph, becoming like a base that everyone could trot upon. People could walk on that, holding everyone else up. When you are modest, you let people walk on you, on one hand, only because you want to help them and be a blessing to them. That's modesty. It's true modesty. And that is the basis what the entire tabernacle stood on. And you will be a basis for the entire nation, what the whole entire nation could stand upon. That is called the Yesod, the foundation. And that, of course, came from that half a shekel of the coin that was brought in Parashat Shekalim. With these concepts in mind, we must look now around us, what's happening in the world, And more than ever, God is saying to Israel, open your eyes as a nation. We must unite with one another. You have the power of bringing God's light to be a light to the nations, to show the world that there's a God in this world. And by uniting as one and realizing the beauty in your fellow man, and realizing that everyone has a special light and has something to offer, and to look at the blessing of your neighbor and saying, wow, that's blessing all of us, the land, the people, and being happy with the lot of your neighbor. You will eliminate the evil eye and bring out a good eye, and this will bring a blessing to the entire nation of unifying us in the building again of our third temple. The tabernacle was built upon this foundation stone of unifying all of Israel. Because that's the concept. Bring that half a shekel and show that you're one. And that was the whole meaning of building the tabernacle, which is building the temple, which is all about bringing down the divine presence in that building. Divine presence everywhere, but it's focused powerfully like a laser beam in that building of the temple where the divine presence rests. It has taken the infinite and bringing it down and showing how this entire world connects to the infinite creator of the universe. And this, of course, through eliminating the evil eye and realizing and always looking at one another, how good they are, and looking at the good points in one another, and never pointing out the bad character traits in one another. This is what the lesson we learn about the temple is all about. Parashat Shekalim, Parashat Vayakhel, gathering Israel all together, and realizing that you are one united nation. And you have the power to make this world a much better place to live in, a world of love, God, and light in the world of Torah. And this is what your function of the world is all about. And we do fulfill this mission, God willing, we will see such beautiful blessing, and the entire world would look at Israel with a good eye and not an evil eye. Shabbat shalom, b'sna'ot tovot, shalom v'nechama.